B'siyata Deshmaya, we're going to learn Shabbos Daf Kuf Hey. We're going to start on the second line of the Omid. Says the Gemara, Kosav ois achas noitrikin. If somebody writes a single letter, which is an abbreviation, Rashi says he writes a letter and then puts a dot, a mark, a hyphen, something to show that he doesn't mean just the letter, but the letter actually means a word. Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira Machayev v'chachamim poitrim, it was a machlokas tanoim in the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Omer Rabbi Yochanan b'shum Rabbi Yosi ben Zimra, minayin leloshon noitrikun min haTorah. This has nothing to do with Hilchas Shabbos, but the concept of an abbreviation. Do we find words in the Torah that actually serve as an abbreviation to something? Shenemar, he says he's going to bring a pasuk. Hashem said to Avraham Avinu, Ki av hamoin goyim nesaticha. Hashem said, I'm going to make you a father to a multitude of nations. So the word av hamoin, which is 6 letters, Aleph base is Av, Hey Mem Vov Nun is Hamoin, and that actually is an abbreviation of 6 concepts. Av, the Aleph is Av Nesaticha L'Umois, I'll make you a father to the nations. Base, Bochur Nesaticha L'Umois, you will be chosen to the nations, amongst the nations. Hamoin, the word Hamoin, so the Hey, we've seen on Daf Kuf Daled, is sometimes interchanged with a Ches. So it's Choviv Nesaticha B'Umois, you will be beloved to the nations. Melech Nesaticha L'Umois, you will be a king to the nations. Vosik Nesaticha L'Umois, you will be very distinguished amongst the nations. Nemon Nesaticha L'Umois, and you will be trusted to the nations. That's Av Hamoin. So you see in the Torah 6 letters that actually mean 6 words. Rabbi Yochanan, Didei Omar, Rabbi Yochanan himself said, that was Rabbi Yochanan in the name of Rabbi Yosi ben Zimra. Rabbi Yochanan himself brought another example. Omar, it says in the pasuk, Onoichi. We know that the Luchoi started with Onoichi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem, I took you out of Mitzrayim, etc. What does the word Onoichi stand for? It's 4 letters, an abbreviation to 4 words. So the Gemara says, Ano Nafshi, I, myself, Ksivas Yehovis, I wrote and I gave over to you. Rabbanon Omri, the Rabbanon all say that the same word Anoichi is an abbreviation but differently. Amira Ne'ima Ksiva Yehovis, a very pleasant statement referring to the Torah was written and given to Klal Yisrael. Ikadamra, others say Anoichi lemafreya. You can actually read the letters. The word Anoichi is actually an abbreviation in reverse, starting with the Yud at the end. Yehiva Ksiva Ne'emonim Omereo. It was given in writing, and its statements are reliable, referring to the Torah. Debei Reb Nosson Omri. Debei Reb Nosson, in the Beis Medrash of Reb Nosson, they found another pasuk that is an abbreviation, and that's the pasuk regarding the donkey of Bilam. It says that the donkey of Bilam, it stopped on the way, it squashed his leg against the wall, it deviated from the journey, and he said, Hine anoichi yatzasi lesoton ki yorat haderech lenegdi. The Malach was telling Bilam, why are you hitting your donkey? I was the one that was Yorat. I was the one that hastened. Haderech lenegdi. I hastened. It means he was claiming to him, why are you opposing me? The Malach was saying in Hashem's name, he was saying, why are you running? Why are you hasting towards going to curse Klal Yisrael when it's opposing? You know that I, Hashem, don't want you to go and curse Klal Yisrael. So the word Yorat is actually an explanation to Bilam as to what was going on with his donkey. Yud Reish Tes. Yora, first it was afraid, and the Mefarshim explained that the donkey had a natural instinct. He felt something wasn't right here. Afterwards, he saw the angel, he saw the Malach, and then Notasa, he turned aside because he was afraid of going face to face with the Malach. Continues the Gemara. Debei Rabbi Shmuel Tana. In the Beis HaMedrash of Rabbi Shmuel they learnt caramel regarding the korban oimer that they would bring on the second day of Pesach. It was made of barley flour what type of kernels should they use? So the Pasuk says that Kisakriv minchas bikurim lashem oviv kolui bo'esh geres caramel takriv es minchas bikurecha. It should be caramel, which caramel stands for kar moli, a very full. It means, the literal translation is a full pillow. It actually means that the shell of the barley kernels should be full. It should be very, very ripe. So there you see the word caramel is an abbreviation for two words. Reb Acha bar Yaakov Omar, v'hu kilelani klolon nimretzes. David HaMelech said about Shimi ben Geri that he cursed me a klolon nimretzes, an explicit curse. The word nimretzes is an abbreviation for 5 things that Shimi ben Gera was cursing David HaMelech for, or about. The trikon, it's an abbreviation of noyof. The nun is noyof, an adulterer. Who? Mem moyovihu, he comes from moyov. Reitzeahu, he's a murderer. Tzoirerhu, an enemy. Te'evahu, an abomination. Reb Nachman bar Yitzchak Omar. Reb Nachman bar Yitzchak brings another source for abbreviations in Psukim, that the Pasuk says, Ma nedaber uma nitztadok. What can I say and how can I, make myself righteous? And there it was talking about that Yehuda was telling Yosef, who was then the king of Mitzrayim, or was the second in command in Mitzrayim, who caught the brothers with the golden goblet belonging to the royal, to the palace, and they accused the Shvatim of stealing it. And Yehuda says, Man dabir man nitztadok, what can I say? What can I say? So the Gemara says the word nitztadok means that Yehuda was saying as follows: Nun nechoinim anachnu, we are upright people. Tzadikim anachnu, we are righteous people. Tahirim anachnu, we are pure people. Deich dochim anachnu, we are clean and innocent people. Kedoshim anachnu, we are holy people. And that's the message Yehuda was giving Yosef. We are not thieves. We didn't steal this goblet. Something else happened, and we know what happened. We know that Yosef had the goblet put into their bags in order to arrange for the whole scene that was going to unfold. Continues the Gemara. Says the next Mishnah, HaKosev shtei oisiyos b'shtei ha'alomis. If somebody writes 2 letters, and we know to be chayiv on Shabbos for Kosev, you have to write 2 letters. He wrote 2 letters b'shtei ha'alomis, in 2 lapses of unawareness. He wrote 1 letter, and then he became aware that he shouldn't have done it, it was Osa, and then he again forgot either that it was Shabbos or he forgot it was Osa to write, and he wrote the 2nd letter. Achas Shachris v'achas beinu arbaim. 1 letter he wrote in the morning, the other in the afternoon. And Rashi explains that we can assume that if he wrote 1 letter in the morning and 1 in the afternoon, that he had enough time in all that time to become aware that you're not allowed to write and that it's Shabbos. And we can assume that there was a Yediyah in between, and therefore writing 1 letter in the morning and 1 in the afternoon is considered a letter with shtei ha'alomos, in 2 lapses of unawareness. Reb Gamliel mechayev. Reb Gamliel says he's chayev because he wrote 2 letters. Even though we know that if there's an awareness between one time you do an Aveira and another time you do an Aveira, you have to bring 2 chatois, but that's only if you did a whole Aveira before you became aware. If you just did half an Aveira before you became aware, then the awareness does not break away the second time you did half an Aveira from the first time, and he's going to be chayev. The Chachomim poitrim, the Chachomim say that he's potur. But my komifligi, what's the nekuda of their machlekes? Reb Gamliel sovar ein yediyah lechatzi shiur, that knowledge, awareness, when he's only done half an aveira, is not considered a yediyah, which is mechalik, which means that as far as korban chatos is concerned, there's a new reason for a chatos, and you cannot connect the two. Rabbanon Sovri, yesh yediyah lechatzi shiur, that there is, even though you only did half an Aveira, half the Melacha before, it's considered that you'll become aware, and then afterwards, if you do the Aveira again, we start again, and since at each end, at each side of each lapse of unawareness, he only did half the Aveira, therefore he's not going to be chayav a chatos. And we've actually seen this in the Gemara before, and it should be self-understood. Hadron alocha boina b'siyata d'shmaya, we finished learning Perek HaBoina, and we're going to right away start learning Perek Rebbe Eliezer. Says the Mishnah, Rebbe Eliezer Omer is actually called Perek Ha'oireg, weaving. Rebbe Eliezer says, Ha'oireg shloisha chutin bitchila. If you're starting a weaving project, you're starting to weave a fabric, then you have to weave 3 threads, and then in order for it to be called that you've done a significant melacha of weaving, to be chayev. V'achas al ha'orig, chayev. If you already have a woven fabric and you add just 1 thread, that's then chayev. Since you already have the fabric, then adding the thread is already significant, and therefore you're chayev even for just 1 thread. That's the opinion of Rebbe Eliezer. The Chachamim say, Bein b'tchila, bein b'soif, irrespective of whether you're starting a new weaving project or whether you are continuing an existing project, Shi'urei shtei chutim, then the amount of threads you have to weave in order to be chayev on Shabbos is 2 threads. Continues the Gemara. Ha'oiseh shtei botei nirin. If somebody sets 2 botei nirin. Botei nirin are called the heddle eyes. And just so a brief introduction, just so we should understand a little bit of what's going on here. And the truth is, it's not so easy to understand because we don't really know exactly what the loom in the time of the Gemara looked like. But we know more or less from the different Gemaras we've learned, we get an idea. There's 2 different types of threads. There are the warp threads, which we could call the vertical threads, and those are facing the person vertically. And you could have hundreds of these threads. And then you have the weft, which is the threads going horizontally, which are woven in and out the warp threads. Now, if you had 100 warp threads and you had to go up and down and up and down and up and down, it will be painstakingly complicated to get any weaving done. So how did they take care of this? So they had a type of structure, and as time moved on in history, these structures became more sophisticated, but they had a structure where they would have a type of frame, and from the frame was hanging some threads. At the end of each thread, or within each thread, there was a loop, and they would thread through, in the loops of this frame, they would thread through every second warp thread, which means number 1, number 3, number 5, number 7, each would have their own hole hanging down, going through the heddle eye of one of these threads on this frame. And now, if you lifted up this frame, what you're actually doing is in one go, you're going to be lifting up all those many, many odd threads. And now, if you lift them all up, you can easily just pass along between the odd and even threads, pass along the weft. And that was the weft thread. It was on a reel of thread and on a shuttle, and they would pass that shuttle backwards and forwards. But once you've passed it through once, you now want the even threads to go up and the odd threads to go down. So they had another frame also with heddle eyes, and in each eye was one of the even threads. Thread number 2, number 4, number 6, etc. And now, often by use of pedals, they would go up and down. 1 foot down, 1 foot up, means that one of the frames are up, possibly all the odd threads are up, all the even threads are down. Now you can pass through the weft, and then you change over, you put the foot down the other side, and now the other threads are even. And then you could go backwards, forwards, up and down, and reasonably comfortably weave the fabric. Now, setting 2 of these botinirin, putting the threads, the warp threads, through two of these heddle eyes, that is called a melacha, and it's osa. Ha'oiseh shtei botinirin, benirin, bekirus, benapo, bekaboro, ubesiv. In any of these settings, chayev is going to be chayev on Shabbos. And the Gemara is going to explain these a little bit more at length. Continues the Mishnah, we know that one of the malachos is sewing. Somebody who sews 2 stitches on Shabbos is chayev. Even though tearing on its own is destructive, and doing a malacha that's destructive is not chayev on Shabbos. But since over here it's not destructive, it's constructive, you're tearing it just in order to be able to sew it up in a better fashion, then if he tears the 2 stitches with the intentions of then sewing 2 stitches, that is the malacha of kireah, of tearing, and he's chayev on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Ki asa Rabbi Yitzchak, when Rabbi Yitzchak came from Eretz Yisrael to Bovel, Toni, he said the following. He was quoting Rabbi Eliezer, and when quoting Rabbi Eliezer, he said shtayim, that you're chayev on Shabbos for weaving just 2 threads. Asks the Gemara v'anan tanan gimel. But in the Mishnah we see Rabbi Eliezer says that you're only chayev on Shabbos if you weave 3 threads. Loi kasha, says the Gemara, ha be'alimi, ha be'ktini. There's a difference between whether they are thick threads or whether they are thin threads. Omri lo lahai gisa, v'omri lo lahai gisa. Some explain it one way, others explain it another way. Omri lo lahai gisa, some explain it one way, alimi, the thicker threads, klasa lo isosri. If you weave 3 threads, they will not get unraveled, and therefore you're chayev. Trei, however, if you have the thicker threads and you only weave twice, 2 threads, then sostri, they will become unraveled. It's not called a significant melacha, you will not be chayev. Ktini, however, the thin threads, trei nami lo sostri, even 2 threads will not get unraveled, and therefore you're chayev. V'omri lo lahaigis, and some say the other way around. Ktini, the thin threads, klasa yudi, when you've woven 3 threads, only then it's noticeable. Threads are very thin. We're talking about ktini, small thin threads. Thin threads, if you have less than 3 threads, it's not even a noticeable melacha, it's not significant. Trei lo yodi, 2 of them are insignificant. Therefore, you're only chayev if you weave 3 threads. Alimi, however, if the threads are thicker, trei nami yodia, then even just weaving 2 threads are noticeable, it's significant, and you'll be chayev. Continues the Gemara, Tanya, we learnt in a brisa. Ha'oireg gimel chutin betchila, somebody who weaves 3 threads at the beginning, on the outset of his of a new project of the fabric, ve'echod ala orig, or if he weaves a single thread on an already existing fabric, chayev, he's going to be chayev, and that's exactly what we saw in our Mishnah from Rebbe Eliezer. V'chachamim oimrim, bein betchila, bein b'soif shiuron beis chutin, like the chachamim in our Mishnah, irrespective of whether it's the beginning of a new fabric or whether it's a continuation of an existing fabric, you're chayev if you weave 2 threads. Continues the brisa, ubesafa beis chutin, on the edges of the length, on the warp threads, on the outer edge of this material, of the fabric that you're sewing, they would sometimes have a little bit of different threads, a different color, different type of threads for on the margin. And there, beis chutin, if you weave through them, even just two chutin, 2 threads, you're already chayev. I'm not sure exactly how this works. I'm not sure how you can just weave 2 threads, but either way, that's what the Gemara says. Baroichav gimel botenirin. If you weave 2 threads and you've been through 3 botenirin, as we said before, 3 heddle eyes, that means you up and down. You've got a botenirin, or the eyes pulling the odd ones up and the even ones down. The even ones up, the odd ones down. So if you weave 2 threads with the weft, and you're going through these border warp threads, just 3 botinir in the width of 3 of these heddle eyes, that's when you're chayev. What is this compared to? Why should you be chayev on Shabbos? It's so narrow. It's only the width of 3 heddle eyes. That's hardly significant. It's compared la'oirig tziltzul cotton. It's similar to weaving a very thin belt, and that's called a malacha, and he's chayev. Beis chutin baroichav gimel botinirin. And you're chayev if you just weave 2 threads through 3 warp threads, which are the 3 botinirin, you're already chayev. That's the end of the brisa. Says the Gemara, V'ha'orei gimel chutin b'tchilo, v'echod ala orig chayev. The brisa that started off, without mentioning any names, just said that the beginning of a project of weaving, of making a fabric, is 3 threads, and after adding on to an existing one, it's just 1 thread. Stoma Rebbe Eliezer. It seems that the stoma of the brisa was like Rebbe Eliezer in our Mishnah. Tani Yidoch, there's another brisa. Ha'oirig beis chutin al hagas. Somebody who weaves 2 threads al hagas on a large woven fabric. You already have a fabric and you're just adding on 2 threads. Va'al ha'imra, and this is a border. Before we mentioned a border on going along the length of the material, the edges of the warp threads. Now we're talking about the first waft threads, the horizontal threads. That's called the imra, the border. And it says there, if you just make on the border, which had a different type of thread, if you just thread 2 threads on an imra, which is right at the beginning, you're starting a project, chayev yochayev. So you see here that both al-hagas on an existing woven fabric, or al-imra, which is on the border at the start, you're chayev for 2 threads. Rabbi Eliezer says, afilu echod, that if it's already an existing a fabric, then just 1 thread is enough. That's Rabbi Eliezer in our Mishnah. Ubesofa shnei chutim beroichav shloisha botinirin chayev. And here Rabbi Eliezer is adding in the halacha that we saw before in the name of the Chachamim. It seems they're not arguing with this detail, that on the edges of the length of the fabric, on the warp threads on the edges, that it was a different type of thread, and they're just weaving twice through 3 of these heddle eyes, 3 of these threads is already chayev. It's similar to just weaving a very thin belt. If you have 2 threads that you're weaving through across the warp threads that are held in 3 botinirin, you're chayev. That's the end of the second brisa. The Gemara says, from the fact that the brisa started, ha'oirig beis chitin al hagas, v'alo imra chayev, from the very fact that the brisa started that you're chayev for 2 threads, if it's adding on to an existing fabric, or 2 threads at the beginning, at the border, at the beginning of a new fabric, and doesn't say any names, stam karabonon. That means the stam author of the brisa is like the Chachamim in our Mishnah, and that's what they hold, that irrespective of whether you're starting a fabric or continuing a fabric, the amount of threads you have to weave through in order to be chayev is just 2 threads. Continues the Gemara. Ha'oiseh beis botinirin. We saw in the Mishnah that if you set 2 of these heddle eyes, just setting the threads in the heddle eyes on Shabbos, you're chayev. And the Mishnah says, in what settings? Benirin, bekirus, benapa, bechabora, ubasal, chayev. Asks the Gemara, my benirin, what is this benirin? Omar Abaya, tarte bova nira, v'tchoda benira. What Rashi seems to explain is as follows. This frame that we discussed before, that they had this frame on which the threads were hanging down, and on those vertical threads there would be a loop, and in that loop they would hold the warp threads, and that way the warp threads would, number 1, stay in position, and number 2, he would be able to raise and lower the odd and even threads accordingly. So one of the methods that they would use is it wouldn't be a sophisticated frame. There would just be a rod on top, hanging, and then they would loop around the rod. It would just have 1 single thread that would be looped down till it reaches the first of these warp threads. He'll circle the warp thread twice, and then like circling it, holding it, so to speak, and then he'll take this 1 thread and go back up to the rod, come back over the rod, come back down to thread number 3, and do the same, go round it twice, and go back up, and then thread number 5, etc. And that's how they would have this 1 rod that was holding this thread that was going round and round, holding all the odd threads, and then they would have another rod like this, holding the even ones, and that's how they could maneuver all these warp threads. So the Gemara says that when the Mishnah says that making two such heddle eyes on Shabbos is chayev beniron. Beniron means tarta beboti nira v'choda benira. If you're going twice around the warp thread, which is called the boti nira, which is the heddle loops, and then once over benira onto the heddle, onto the rope, the heddle rope holding this whole contraption, that's your chayev if you do that on Shabbos. Bekirus. What's the kirus? We saw in the Mishnah that if you set 2 loops, 2 heddle eyes in a contraption called a kirus, what is that? My bekirus, Omarav Mutsuvisa. This is a heddle frame, similar to what we said before, where it's not just a rod and a single thread that was going round, holding, being curled round each of the threads that we just explained. Rather, it was a frame, and going from the top to the bottom of the frame were threads with loops in the middle, and they would thread the warp threads through the loops. Each thread had its own hole. So threading, setting these warp threads through two of these heddle eyes in this frame, the heddle frame, that is called, that is going to be chayev on Shabbos. Continues the Gemara. V'atoifer based tfiroi, somebody who sews 2 stitches on Shabbos is chayev. Asks the Gemara, V'atanina ba'avis melachis v'atoifer based tfiros. We already learnt earlier in the Mishnah that tells us all the melachis. We saw in the Mishnah that sewing 2 stitches is chayev. What are you coming to add here in this Mishnah? Answers the Gemara, Mishum de kaboya lemisna seifa v'hakirea al manos litfor based tfiros. Since the Mishnah wants to continue to tell us the chiddush that tearing with the intentions of sewing 2 stitches, then you're chayev for the tearing. Ktoni nabi hatoifer. The Mishnah preempts that by saying that sewing 2 stitches is chayev, but there's no chiddush in that part of the Mishnah. Asks the Gemara Vakirea, Honami Tanina Ba'avis Melachis. This that you're chayev for tearing on Shabbos with the intentions of sewing is also mentioned in a previous Mishnah. Elo mishum de kaboya lemisna seifa hakirea b'chamosoi. Since the next Mishnah is going to speak to us about somebody who tears a cloth in anger, in rage, or because he's in pain over somebody who died, and that's why it mentions here, because it's going to mention tearing out of rage. In the next Mishnah, it mentions here tearing in order to sew, and if it mentions tearing in order to sew, it also mentions the halacha of sewing. Continues the Gemara. The Mishnah said that if you tear in order to make 2 stitches, to repair the tear, you're chayev. In what case would it find that a person would want to tear something in order to make 2 stitches? Says the Gemara, De'ovda Beikista, when he first wove or sewed his garment, then there were folds in it, and it was as if there were pockets protruding. It wasn't smooth, and he wanted to smooth it out. So he would make a tear where the fold was, and then he would re-sew it, it would be straight, and that's called tearing with the intent of re-sewing, and that's when he's chayev. Continues the next Mishnah. Hakirea b'chamosoi, if somebody tears a garment because in rage, he's angry. V'almoisoi, or if he tears it because he's upset, he's depressed, he's sad about somebody who passed away. V'chola mekalkalin, and all those, any malacha done that is destructive and there's no constructive reason, he's not causing any benefit or improvement by what he's doing, he's just destroying, pturim, he's potter. V'makalkil al manas l'sakin, but when you destroy something with the intentions of fixing it, of repairing it, then shi'uroi k'masakin, then as we saw before regarding the tearing and the sewing, then the measure of that you're going to be chayev for the destructive melacha is going to be the same measure as the constructive one that you're going to do to repair it. Continues the Mishnah, shi'ur hamalabin, the amount of thread or material that you have to do the following melachas: hamalabin, to whiten, hamanapes, to disentangle, hatzevea, to dye, vatove, to spin. How long does the thread, or how much thread do you need to be chayev for those melachas? Kimeloi roichav hesit kofel, the amount of thread which is the same length as a sit, double a sit. How much is a sit? The amount of distance between a person's index finger and his middle finger when they are completely spread apart, double that. V'ha'oirig shnei chutin, somebody who weaves 2 threads, shi'uroi kemeloi hasit, then the length of the thread that you weave has to be a single sit. The distance between his index finger and his middle finger when they are spread apart. Now, even though the Mishnah says that you're only chayev if you weave the width of the fabric that you're trying to weave, and we're talking here about passing the weft through the warp threads And it's enough, even if you don't go all the way to the end, the whole width of the fabric, you just go the amount of a sit, you're chayev. Less than that, you won't be chayev. We have to remember the Gemara we saw in Amud Aleph. There are cases, for example, if you're trying to weave a very thin belt, then even the width of 3 botenirin, 3 heddle eyes, is wide enough, and you'll also be chayev. But when you were talking about a regular piece of fabric that you're trying to weave, then you have to have woven at least the width of a sit in order to be chayev. And then you have to go that width, as the Mishnah says, 2 threads. You have to have 2 waft threads going through the 2 weft threads going through these warp threads. Says the Gemara, Uraminu. We're going to ask a question on what we learnt in the Mishnah. We saw in the Mishnah that somebody who tears a cloth out of anger or because of somebody who died, that your potter, it's called mekalkel. Nothing constructive comes of it. Asks the Gemara, Hakirea b'chamosoi ube'evloi ve'almeisoi chayev. There's a brisa that says that if you tear a cloth in anger or in mourning over a dead person, you're chayev. And v'afal pisha mechalil es Shabbos yotzo yudei kriya. So here's adding in another halacha. We know that if somebody dies, then the 7 close relatives, that means if either father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, or spouse passes away, then one has to tear kriya, one has to rent one's garment. And even so, somebody who tears their garment for a mace, v'al meisoi, then even though he did it on Shabbos, and it's Chilul Shabbos, he's not allowed to do that, nonetheless, he was Yotza. He doesn't need to tear his garment again after Shabbos. But what do we see from here? There's somebody who tears his garment out of rage, or because he's upset about somebody who died, is Chayev. And the Mishnah says he's Potter. Says the Gemara, Loi Kasha. It's not a contradiction. Ha b'meis didei, ha b'meis de alma. It depends if it was his mace, if it was one of his 7 close relatives, then doing the kriya is not destructive, it's constructive. He needs to do it. He's mechuyev to do kriya, and therefore he's chayev. The Mishnah, however, is not talking about when somebody does kriya, he tears his clothes because of his own mace, he's doing it because somebody else died. Then that's not constructive, that's destructive, and therefore he's potter. Asks the Gemara, if you look in the Mishnah, the very Mishnah that says your potter says Hakirea b'chamosei v'al meisoi, on his mace. So that seems that even though we're talking about somebody who does kriya for one of his own 7 relatives, and nonetheless he's going to be potter, and that contradicts the brisa. Why should he be potter? He's mechuyev to do kriya, so why should he be potter? Says the Gemara, la'olam b'meis didei. You're right. Both the Mishnah and the Brisa are both talking about the types of relatives that are close to you and that you are required to take care of the mace, to make sure they get buried, etc. Ubahanoch delav b'nei avelus ninu. And when it says in the Mishnah that his potter is talking about relatives that are not one of the 7 relatives, a little bit of a more distant relative, it's still his relative, and it's called meisoi, but and he's required to take care of this dead person. However, he's not got a chiyuv, a requirement to do kriya. Since he doesn't have a chiyuv, doing kriya is called destruction, and therefore he's going to be potter. Continues the Gemara, however, if the person that passed away was a chacham, was a very wise person, then, or he was a teacher, he was a rebbe, chiyuva Michayev. In that case, whoever was learning from that chacham, it depends on what caliber of chacham, we're not going into that now, it's other places in Shas, but if a chacham passes away, then the person is mechuyev, even if it's not one of the 7 relatives of the chacham, he's mechuyev to tear kriya, and obviously if he tears kriya on Shabbos, he's going to be chayev. The Tanya we saw, because we learned in a brisa, Chacham Shameis, if a Chacham passes away, Hakil Kroivov, everybody is compared to a relative. Asks the Gemara, Hakil Kroivov, everybody's a relative? Solka Daitoch, is that what you thought? Eloim Hakil Kroivov, they are similar, they have the same halachas as a relative that you're mechuyev to do kriya. Hakil Koirin Olov, everybody does kriya, they tear their clothes when a Chacham passes away. Hakil choltzin olov, it was a custom at the time that when they would follow the mace, they would tear their garments and expose their shoulders, and they would all go out with an exposed shoulder. Hakil mevarin olov berchova. The halacha is that an oval, somebody who's one of his 7 relatives have just passed away, that we learn from Psukim by Cheskel, that the first meal he's not allowed to eat from his own food. Somebody else has to give him the food, and the custom was they would eat that first meal outside in the rechova, in the public. And when a chacham passes away, everybody fits this bracket, and everybody eats their first suda outside. Says the Gemara, the Mishnah that says Potter indeed is not talking about when a chacham passed away. If a chacham passed away, he's going to be chayev. Says the Gemara, adam kosherhu, if he was just a kosher person, a good person, chiyuva mechayev, then everyone is chayev to take kriya on him. The Tanya, because we learned in a brisa, mipnei ma meisim bonov ubnoisov shel adam kashem ktanim. Why does people's children die when they are very young, and when they're young they're completely kosher, they're completely pure and clean, never done an avera? In kadesha yivke v'yisabil al adam kosher, in order to give people the opportunity, or the parents the opportunity, to cry over somebody kosher that passed away, therefore young innocent people pass away. Asks the Gemara, Kadesha Yivke Irvoino Shokli Minei, just because you want the parents or whoever it is to cry, that's why you're taking away these young innocent people? There must have been some punishment. People don't just die young for no reason. As a punishment for not crying when a kosher person passed away, because when a person cries over, he sheds a tear over a kosher person that passes away, then all his averos are forgiven, also because of the respect that he gave to this kosher person. And as a punishment for not doing that, a person's children will die young and innocent, and then he'll have reason to cry over an innocent and kosher person. So in our Mishnah that says that if you do kriya, your potter, if for every kosher person you're chayev to do kriya. What's the Mishnah talking about? The Mishnah must be talking about that it's not talking about somebody who's got the title of Adam kosher, a kosher person. Continues the Gemara, if a person is present when any other yid passes away, he's chayev to do kriya. There's a question in the poskim whether we do this today, but according to the Gemara, he's chayev to do kriya. The Tanya we saw in a brisa, but Shimon ben Elazar Omer, ha'oimed ala meis, somebody who's standing by a person who's dying, b'shas yitzias neshama, when his soul leaves him, chayev likroya, he's chayev to do kriya. Ha'lamazeh doime. Why? Because the neshama of a yid leaving him is compared to a sefer Torah shenisrfa. It's like a sefer Torah which is getting burnt. So our Mishnah is talking about, that says that you're potter. When you're potter, if you're there when somebody passed away, you have to do kriya. If you have to do kriya, it's not destructive, it's constructive. You should be chayev. Says the Gemara, Lo tzricha de lo koi b'shas yitzias neshama. The Mishnah is talking about somebody who did kriya when in the case that he was not present when the person passed away. Says the Gemara, Tinach meisai. I can understand how you've answered the original contradiction between somebody who does kriya because of a dead person, if you're chayev or potter. If you're chayev to do kriya, then it's constructive, then you're chayev on Shabbos, and if you're not chayev to do kriya, then it's destructive, and doing it on Shabbos, you'll be potter. We have another contradiction, and that's a person that is tearing his clothes in anger. In the Mishnah it says he's engaging in destructive behavior. Potter, that's not called a significant malacha on Shabbos. However, in the brisa we saw that somebody who does kriya b'chamosai is chayev. How are we going to answer that contradiction? Says the Gemara, it's not a contradiction, we can explain it. Ha Rabbi Yehuda, ha Reb Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda holds that he's chayev, and it's Reb Shimon who says that he's potter. What does that mean? The Gemara is going to explain. Rabbi Yehuda de Omar Melacha she'ein tzricha legufa. Chayev oleh. Rabbi Yehuda says he's chayev like in the Brisa. Why? Because Rabbi Yehuda says that even if a malacha is einot tzricha legufo, that means the activity itself is destructive. You're not making any improvement. For example, you're tearing the clothes, you're destroying the clothes. You're not improving the clothes in any way, you're not benefiting the clothes in any way, you're not repairing the clothes in any way. That's called a malacha she'eina tzricha legufa. However, since it's got a good reason otherwise, you can still be chayev. So Rabbi Yehuda says malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, nonetheless chayev aleh. That's the Brisa who says chayev. Reb Shimon, the Mishnah that says potur, is Reb Shimon. The Omar malacha she'ein tzricha legufa potur oleh. The Mishnah is going according to Reb Shimon, and Reb Shimon holds that a malacha you only chayev if there was something constructive, there was something that benefited the actual malacha you were doing, not that there was a side benefit. Says the Gemara, Eimad Deshamas Leil Rabbi Yehuda. When does Rabbi Yehuda say that a malacha she'eino tzricha legufa, there's no benefit for itself, that you're chayev b'mesakin? That's only if it's rectifying it some other place, if you're doing something positive, if something is going to be improved, benefited because of it. But b'mekalkil, if all you're doing is destroying, you're taking a clothes, you're taking a garment, you're tearing it, you're not chayev, you're tearing it because you're angry, because you're annoyed, you're in a rage, that's kilkel. And mekalkel, we saw in the Mishnah, kol mekalkel is pturim. Mekalkel mishamasli, omer ba'ovin, hai nami masakinhu. When somebody tears their garments in anger, there's also some type of tikkun here. There's something to be gained from it. He satisfies his Yetzer Hara, he diminishes the effects of his Yetzer Hara. He's angry. The Yetzer Hara made him angry. Tearing his clothes is benefiting him, that he can now calm down from his anger. And since, even though it's einu tzricha legufa, the clothes itself is not benefiting, but since the person himself is benefiting from it, according to Rabbi Yehuda, he's going to be chayev. Asks the Gemara, Ochahai gavna mishori? Is it mutter to tear one's clothes out of anger, just because it's helping you calm down from your anger, to the extent that according to Rabbi Yehuda you're going to be chayev? It's called constructive in any way. Let's see what the Brisa has to say about somebody who calms down from his rage by tearing his clothes. Let's see whether it's helping the person, whether it's constructive. V'atani, we learned in the Brisa, Shimon ben Elazar Omer, mishum chilfa bar igra, Sha'omar mishum Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, hamekareya begodov b'chamosoi. If somebody tears his clothes in anger, v'mashaber kelov b'chamosoi, or somebody breaks his utensils in anger, v'mafazir mo'isav b'chamosoi, or somebody who scatters his coins, his money, out of anger, yehei be'inecho ka'ibid avodah zarah. It should be in your eyes like somebody who's serving an avodah zarah. Shekach umnusoi shel Yetzer Hara. That's the craft of the Yetzer Hara. Hayoim omar loi asei kach. Today he tells you, just get angry, just tear your clothes, just do little things. Ulamachar oimer loi asei kach. Tomorrow he'll tell you to do something a bit worse. Ad she'oimer loi avoid avodah zarah. Till at the end he's going to tell you to engage in idolatry, in avodah zarah. And then he's going to go and serve avodah zarah. So somebody who tears his clothes out of rage, he's letting the Yetzer Hara in. That's clearly destructive. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, how do we understand this? Omer Rav Ovin. Rav Ovin said, Mikra, where do you find such a thing that the Yetzer Hara comes and sits inside and waits and slowly makes you do things and to go from bad to worse? Because it says in the Pasuk, Lo yeh v'cho el zor. There should not be in you a strange God, and you should not bow to an alien God. Asks the Gemara, it says, there shouldn't be in you, as a so to speak, inside your body. What type of strange God is inside your body? Have Omer is a Yetzer Hara. That's the Yetzer Hara. So we have a question. If tearing your clothes is allowing the Yetzer Hara into your body and allowing him to slowly take control over you, according to Rabbi Yehuda, then it's destructive. Why are you chayev? Says the Gemara, Loi. I'll tell you when Rabbi Yehuda agrees that tearing one's clothes in anger, so to speak, is a benefit and he'll be chayev. The ka'ovid lemirma emasa ainsha beisa. He's doing it just in order to strike fear, to instill fear in the members of his home. Kihad Rav Yehuda. We found a case like that with Rav Yehuda, that Sholif Matzvaisa. He pulled out the borders of one of his garments. He was trying it was a show, it was an act of anger in order to strike fear to the family members, in order that they should do what they had to do and realize that there's authority. Rav Acha bar Yaakov Tovar Moni Tvira. Rav Acha bar Yaakov was used to breaking broken utensils. Rav Sheshes Romilo Le'amsa. Rav Sheshes, he threw at his maid Munini Aresha. Onto her head he threw some fish brine. Reb Abba Tovar Nachsema. Reb Abba, he broke the lid of a pitcher, and all these chachomim, these big tzaddikim who did this in order to instill fear in the home, they obviously had good reason to do it, and chas v'sholem, no one listening to this shir should start breaking things and smashing things at home. The Gemara tells us that amatel emu yaseira b'seich beisai. We saw this early on in Masechas Shabbos, that it's a very bad thing in order to instill too much fear in the home, but these great chachomim, they knew exactly what they were doing, and they did what they were supposed to do for good reasons. And since in those cases, smashing, tearing, it looks as if it's in anger, but it wasn't the bad anger. In that case, it's not called destructive, and therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is going to be chayev, and that's pshat in what we said before, that Rabbi Yehuda says he's chayev. Continues the Gemara. Omer Reb Shimon ben Pazi, Omer Reb Yeshua ben Levi, Mishum bar Kapara. Kol hamoyred dmois al adam kosher. Anyone who sheds tears when a kosher person passes away, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Soifron, Hashem counts the tears, Umanichon beboti gnozov, and he puts them, he stores them away in his storehouses. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk, Noidi, my wanderings, Sofarto, Oto, you have yourself counted. Simo dim osi b'noidecho, place my tears in your flask. Haloi b'sifrosecho, are they not in your account? So you see there that Hashem counts the tears. Which tears? Says the Gemara, the tears of somebody who cries over a kosher person. Omer Rav Yehuda Amarav, Kol hamisatzil bespeido shel chacham. Anyone who's lazy about giving a hesped, an eulogy for a chacham, ro'ui lekovrei b'chayav, is fit to be buried alive. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, vayikburu oisai, they buried him bigvul nachlosai, on the border of his inheritance, b'simna sorach, in timna sorach, asher b'har Ephraim, which is in Mount Ephraim, mitzvoin lehar Goash, on the north of Har Goash, Mount Goash. The word Goash, it might be the name of a mountain, but it also means trembling. Says the Gemara, Melamed sherogash aleim har l'horgon. It teaches us that the mountains trembled over them to kill them because they did not give a hesped over Yeshua when Yeshua passed away. Omer Reb Chia bar Abba Omer Rabbi Yochanan, Kol hamisatzil bespeido shel chacham. Anyone who's lazy over giving a hesped for a chacham, eino marich yomim, his days will not be prolonged. Midah keneged midah, this is measure for measure. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Besaso b'shalcha teriveno. Besaso is a measure, with a precise measure. You shall contend with her when you send her away. And the Mefarshim explain exactly how this works, but when it's talking about contending with somebody, then the pasuk uses the lashon of besaso. It's with a measure, with a precise measure, because a person is always, Hashem treats him measure for measure. And therefore, somebody who is not eulogizing the chacham, which means that he doesn't care about the loss of the days of the chacham, then he himself will not be marich yomim, will not have prolonged days. Eisvei Reb Chia bar Abba Rabbi Yochanan. Reb Chia bar Abba asked Rabbi Yochanan the following question. The pasuk says, "Vayavdu ha'omes Hashem kol yomei Yeshua." The nation served Hashem all the days of Yeshua. V'chol yomei azkenim, and all the days of the elders. Which ones are sheherichu yomim achrei Yeshua? Those whose days were prolonged after Yeshua. So you see from here that those that should have eulogized, that should have given a hesped on Yeshua, they lived long days after Yeshua. You just said now that because they didn't eulogize Yeshua, that they were not zeichet to long days. Omaloi, the Gemara says, Bavloi, you Bavloi, Reb Chia bar Abba, who came from Bavel, Yomim yarichu, their days were prolonged. Shonim lo yarichu, their years were not prolonged, which means that they had good days. They were content with their days, but they didn't have many years. So when the Gemara says that the Zakenim were yarichu yomim, they were marich yomim, they had fulfilled days, but they didn't have many days. Ela asks the Gemara, Ela me'ata, you're going to say the same in the pasuk that we say every day, Leman yirbu yameichem v'yimei v'neichem. Then that if you do the mitzvahs, then your days and the days of your children will be prolonged. Are you also suggesting yomim v'lo ishanim? It just means that you'll have fulfilled days, but not that you'll have long years. Says the Gemara, bracha shani. Over there, it's a bracha, it's a blessing. When giving a bracha, of course, the bracha means that that person will have longevity, is going to have long years. Continues the Gemara. V'omer Abchia bar Abba omer Rabbi Yochanan. Echod meno achin shameis, if one of the brothers died, yidagu kol achim kulon, then all the brothers should worry. Why? Because we'll soon see why. Echod mibnei chabura shameis, if one of a group, if one of the members of a group die, then also yidag tidag kol chabura kulo, the whole group should worry, maybe they're next in line. Omri lo, demeis godel. V'omri the mace cotton. Some say that's only if the oldest passes away, the oldest in the group, because we know that midas hadin starts with the top, with the head. So when the head passes away, you'd be worried that the midas hadin is going to now move on to the next ones. Others say it's when the youngest pass away, because when curse strikes, it first strikes at the younger ones. So when the youngest ones pass away, you know, wow, there's a curse coming here, maybe we're next. And the Mir Hashem, in the next share, we're going to continue from here.